Let me welcome my dear friend, colleague, and the keynote speaker, the producer from New York City, Carol Colmenares. Give her a warm welcome. Hey, Carol. Hi.
Yes, I forgot to unmute the microphone. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Michael Kokoyanis Foundation, for organizing these webinars. And welcome, everybody. I hope that you enjoy as much as I do our conversation on children's media, Generation Z, and everything we have to share. 20-something years ago, I began my journey with children's media, soon after finishing college. I started with an internship at Sesame Workshop, called CTW at the time, the Children's Television Workshop. I was an intern, then a production coordinator, then an associate producer, and finally I was a producer for their international division. I then went on and found my own company, Timeline Digital, along with my husband. My time at Sesame Street allowed me to look at children's media through a pair of glasses that I have never wanted to take off. I have applied this view to every project I've been involved with. I find that 20-something years later, those lessons that I learned are still as relevant today, especially when we reflect upon what Gen Zs are looking at, what they're producing, what they're creating. The first lesson that I want to talk about is that representation matters. Sesame Street prides itself with including African American and Latino characters that are part of a working class. And Tara was a child actor with osteogenesis imperfecta, a disorder that caused her to have brittle bones and thus in a wheelchair. But this was not limited to the human characters. Rosita is a Mexican monster who speaks Spanish. There is a two-headed monster, and of course there are Martians who speak Martian. In 2015, Sesame Street added Julia, a four-year-old child with autism. And this year, Yi Young, a 7-year-old Korean-American Muppet, joins the already diverse and wonderful cast. I find myself working now on the Spanish version of Fred Rogers' company, Alma's Way, a creation of Sonia Manzano. As I cast the voices or review the scripts, I often ask myself, how can we make it sound more Puerto Rican or Mexican? How can we include more diversity within our Hispanic community? In addition, for the past 15 years, I have been part of an amazing project funded by the US Department of Education, providing captions and descriptions to educational media for the benefit of students who are blind, have low vision, are deaf, or hard of hearing. In short, the lesson that I carried in every project is to embrace diversity everywhere. The second lesson I want to talk about is attention to details. I learned from the very best production designers that the type of googly eyes that you put on a monster matter. It sounds trivial, but young audiences do notice. Just as they notice if your story has holes. I remember vivid script discussions in which the writers, directors, producers would question if the penguins are wearing tuxedos or if they're just wearing their natural skin. They would also question whether Cookie would eat the vegetables, whether that was in character for Cookie. That later changed. But the fact is that everyone on the team was carefully analyzing, looking, and paying attention to these details. Everything matters in a children's show: the production, the character design, the story, the performance, not to mention the technical aspects. This thoughtfulness is what often sets apart high quality productions. And I don't mean expensive productions. I witnessed many of our Sesame Street partners with less resources make amazing productions that had a lot of detail and that definitely people were paying attention to the details. I also witnessed a lot of inexperienced producers give us um, productions that were not up to standards because they were not paying attention to the details. My carry-on lesson is to be intentional about the details. Finally, the last lesson that I will speak about is about the importance of research in children's media productions. I'm not going to take too long because a dear colleague and friend is going to be a guest that will speak more in depth soon after me. My takeaway is that as a producer, when in doubt, go to the research. What does it have to say? How can the research inform my production? How can I make it simpler so that I can effectively deliver the message? Bringing it back to Gen Zs, who are both consumers and content creators, the lessons still resonate. As content creators, we have to be mindful that they are eager to see diversity represented in the media they consume and the media they create. They do pay attention to the details, much more than before, because you can easily rewatch the content without a schedule. Finally, the world has become smaller. Connectivity has allowed that. My 12-year-old niece, a blogger, a streamer, she's on Twitch, she's on TikTok, she's on Instagram, says to me, Tia, Titi, Auntie, my generation is simply just more open-minded. Thank you all. I hope that the next 2 hours are enriching, informative, and fun.
Thank you so much, Carol, for this very inspiring talk. I would like to keep certain words that you summarized at the very end of your speech, like Gen Zs are both consumers and content creators. They see diversity represented everywhere. They do pay attention to the details, even though some of us think that they don't. They do. And that the world, even though in reality it has become bigger, in our media and cinematic world has really become smaller, because globalization has allowed it to become smaller. And I would also like to keep your niece's viewpoint that her generation is just more open-minded.